Tonight, a nation in mourning. Grieving families look for answers after Thailand's childcare massacre. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Meredith Sheehan. A massacre at a childcare centre in Thailand has the nation in mourning and left the world in shock. At least 37 people have been killed in the stabbing and shooting rampage, 23 of them children, the youngest just 2 years old. As the nation grapples with the tragedy, investigators are trying to work out what drove a former police officer, himself a father, to carry out such an evil act. And a warning, this report from Southeast Asia correspondent Zoe Ford contains distressing details.
A community and a nation in mourning. A day after the vicious attack, grieving families came to a hall beside the daycare centre to try to make sense of this terrible tragedy and find out what happens next. The horror unfolded in a matter of moments. A former police officer wielding a shotgun, pistol and knife carried out the attack indiscriminately.
It all went down really fast. He was slashing. He didn't use the gun. He just kept slashing. It was all by knife.
The attacker, a 34-year-old father, forced his way into a locked room where children were sleeping. At least 23 children, some as young as 2 years old, were killed. Only one is said to have survived. For families who'd lost loved ones, there was only grief and bewilderment.
I already miss my son. I can't believe he's gone. I haven't seen his body yet.
I felt so sad. I fainted. I could not make any sense.
All of the injured victims are in good hands with the doctors at the hospital, but the most important thing is recovering their mental health and giving support to relatives of the victims.
The attacker has been named as 34-year-old Panya Kamrab. Police say he returned to his home after the attack, where he killed his wife and child and took his own life. The former police officer was sacked from the force in June over drug use. He'd attended a court hearing over methamphetamine dealing the morning of the attack. Police say motive will be the focus of their investigation, as well as their initial response.
We must learn lessons, how to control the scene and situation more quickly, and how better to respond.
Fortunately, yesterday this daycare centre wasn't nearly as busy as it usually is. Rain, widespread flooding and a broken-down school bus kept most of the children away. There are normally 90 kids here every day. Yesterday, there were just 24. But regardless of whether their children were here yesterday or not, this entire community is hurting. Zoe Ford, ABC News, Uthai Sawan.
I'm joined now from Chiang Mai in northern Thailand by journalist Caleb Quinley, who's editor of Southeast Asia Globe. Caleb, welcome. What has been the reaction within Thailand?
Thanks for having me, Meredith. Yeah, I mean, it's just a really dark day over here. I guess this is day 2, but to be honest, it's just pure shock and horror. The whole country is just trying to come to terms with what happened, and to be honest, most people don't really have any sense of why this happened at all. The reality is the gunman's motives are completely unclear, but obviously we've heard reports that he went to the child care center after like a problematic court hearing where there were drug charges that he was facing, and then obviously like once he arrived at the scene, that's when kind of the rampage began. But this is the first kind of mass killing of this kind. You know, obviously a couple of years ago we saw a mass shooting in Korat, a few hours south actually of the location where this happened. But that was basically an open shooting in a mall, and this is predominantly an attack on young children. You know, like the youngest child who was killed, I think, was just 2 years old. So I guess the drama of what's going on here is just not lost on anyone, and it's just complete shock everywhere you go. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's thinking about it. It's just pure chaos, unfortunately.
What is Thailand's history like with gun crime and mass shootings? Did anyone think anything like this could happen?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And to be honest, this is becoming a really sort of widely discussed conversation right now. Before the mass shooting 2 years ago, no one had any, prospect that this would happen at all. And then even when that happened, no one could have foresaw that this would happen again. A lesser known fact about Thailand that I think contrasts sort of the public appearance of Thailand as a country, it's this like widely Buddhist country, peaceful country, tourism hotspot for many people around the world. The reality is the country has one of the highest gun crimes in Asia. And their gun ownership is incredibly high here. This doesn't necessarily equate to mass killings. Again, this is, there's only been 2, and the second one happened yesterday. But we do see headlines of shootings, of gun crime every week. So, and the reality is there is sort of a hidden gun problem happening in Thailand, and we're seeing this more every year. So obviously something is happening for these crime rates to be going up. And authorities are basically a bit puzzled about why this is happening, and people are trying to understand more.
What are the gun laws in Thailand, and are they thoroughly monitored?
Yeah, I mean, counterintuitively, the gun laws are actually pretty strict. It's very difficult to get your hands on a gun legally. It takes a lot of time, a lot of paperwork, and you have to have a lot of money. Unfortunately, the black market scene is rampant here. So if you want to go that route, it's very possible you can easily do this. Like the thing is, guns are idolized in Thailand as like a symbol of power. And some make the argument that the reality is Thailand as a country is a military-backed sort of establishment. And so some people say that this sort of military security hegemony that kind of runs through Thai society is sort of trickles down into the population as well. So some people sort of blame this sort of broader security situation as one component to all this violence that we're seeing. But yeah, the tragedy is basically prompting new calls for gun control and mental health awareness. And now there's also conversations about drug use and how to treat people with addiction and also drug problems.
You just mentioned that it is opening up some conversations about what needs to be done to stop this happening again. Has there been any response from the government about that?
Yeah, actually, just an hour ago, a really high-up official he gave a statement to the press saying that they're going to basically reassess their gun laws. Whether or not that actually is going to happen, obviously, remains to be seen. But we are hearing reports that politicians and policymakers are having these discussions internally. So, the whole country is hoping that people take this quite seriously and that this never happens again. So. One thing I definitely do want to say is that, Thais are an incredibly resilient population, and they're showing a lot of strength, obviously a lot of solidarity right now. And the Prime Minister and the King are going to be visiting the hospitals soon, and they should be talking to survivors. But again, all of this is basically creating these new conversations around gun laws and violence, and hopefully new policy will be implemented. So then this will be the last time that we see this kind of attack.
Caleb Quinley, editor of Southeast Asia Globe, thanks for joining us.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.